Have you ever looked at a car and thought, it's beautiful, it's elegant, but it doesn't look dangerous? Because in the 1950s and 60s, some of the most dangerous cars in America didn't wear stripes, didn't roar in the commercials, and didn't brag about being fast. They smiled in silence. Today, we're not talking about the obvious sports cars. Today, we're uncovering elegant cars that hid a dangerous secret under the hood. Machines that could humble much more famous rivals without raising their voice. Picture the scene. A calm car, the radio on, the engine barely audible. Nobody around you suspects a thing. And then you accelerate. In this video, you're going to meet cars that were designed to surprise, to win, and to prove that, back then, real power didn't always need to shout. If you enjoy these kinds of stories and you're passionate about cars with character and history, hit like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Here, we keep telling the stories that made the American automobile great. Buckle up, because in the golden era of the automobile, some of the most elegant cars were also the most dangerous. Let's begin. 1955 Chrysler C300. In 1955, the United States was living in an era of absolute optimism. Highways were expanding, music was getting louder, and cars were starting to become more than simple transportation. But even in that world of excess and chrome, the C300 stood out for something very different. It didn't look like an aggressive car. It didn't need to. It was elegant, restrained, and confident, like someone who doesn't have to introduce themselves for everyone to know exactly who they are. At first glance, it looked like a big luxury coupe made to travel comfortably, quietly, with the world sliding past the windows. But under that long hood, there was something nobody expected in 1955. A V8 engine delivering 300 horsepower. Stop for a second and think about that number. 300 horsepower at a time when most cars barely got close to half of that. It wasn't just power, it was a statement. Chrysler didn't build it to show off in a brochure, they built it to dominate. On the road, the C300 could push past 125 miles per hour. A figure that felt almost unreal in the mid-1950s. And it did it without drama, without theatrics. It accelerated with an unsettling calm, like it always had more in reserve than it was willing to show. But here's the part that turns the C300 into a truly dangerous legend. It wasn't only fast in a straight line. Chrysler took it directly to NASCAR, and something unexpected happened there. This elegant luxury car started winning. Winning for real. Races, championships, and respect. While other manufacturers showed up with clearly sporty machines, Chrysler arrived with a refined coupe that humiliated the competition. Inside, the contrast was even more disturbing. Leather, chrome, refined gauges, and a sense of luxury that could make you forget you were sitting on top of a real mechanical beast. You could drive it one-handed, listen to the radio, and feel like you were in a rolling living room until you buried the throttle and everything changed. Only around 1,700 units of the 1955 Chrysler C300 were built. From day one, it was an exclusive car, and today it's one of the most coveted pieces of classic American luxury, with examples that easily exceed $100,000 at auctions. But beyond the price, what makes it special is what it represented. It was the car that proved elegance could also be dangerous. And the most interesting part is that this story doesn't end here. Because if you think a luxury car winning in NASCAR is already surprising, wait until you see the next one on the list. A car that looked even more harmless and rewrote the rules from the inside. 1951 Hudson Hornet. If the C300 proved that elegance could be dangerous, the Hudson Hornet went even further. Because this car didn't even look fast. In fact, to many modern eyes, the 1951 Hornet looks almost old-fashioned. Low, long, with smooth lines, and a fairly discreet presence, as if it had been designed to blend in among the chrome excess of the 1950s. And yet, this car was one of the most dominant of its era. The Hudson Hornet's secret wasn't a huge engine or aggressive styling. It was something much smarter. Hudson developed a revolutionary architecture known as the step-down design. Instead of seating passengers up on top of the chassis, engineers literally lowered the floor down between the frame rails. The result was an incredibly low center of gravity for the time, and a level of stability no rival could match. Under the hood wasn't a flashy V8, but a 308 cubic inch inline six. On paper, nothing spectacular, but in real life, that engine delivered brutal torque and near indestructible reliability. When equipped with the twin H-power setup, 2 carburetors, the Hornet became a true nightmare for its rivals. And then NASCAR happened. Between 1951 and 1954, the Hudson Hornet dominated the tracks in a way that was almost humiliating. It won close to 80% of the races it entered. Not because it had the most power, but because it stayed glued to the asphalt while everyone else fought to control their cars through corners. While others slid around, the Hornet simply went by. What's most fascinating is that, off the track, it was still a perfectly civilized car. Spacious, comfortable, quiet, and easy to drive. You could use it every day, carry the family, and feel safe, while knowing you were behind the wheel of a machine that had embarrassed the best in competition. Decades later, this story found a new generation of admirers when the Hudson Hornet inspired the character Doc Hudson in the movie Cars. That wasn't random. It was a tribute to a car that didn't need to shout to become a legend. Today, a well-restored Hudson Hornet can easily reach between $50,000 and $100,000. But its real value is what it represents. It proves that intelligence, balance, and well-thought-out engineering can be far more dangerous than brute force. And the best part is the next car on the list changes the rules again. Because now we go from a silent race winner to one of the most exaggerated symbols of American luxury, hiding more strength than anyone ever imagined. 1959 Cadillac Series 62. If there's one car that defines excess, confidence, and late 1950s, American elegance, it's this one. At first glance, it doesn't look dangerous. It looks intimidating. Long, low, wrapped in chrome, with rear fins so exaggerated they looked more like a rocket than an automobile. This wasn't a car that asked for attention. It demanded it. In 1959, Cadillac wasn't competing to be fast. It was competing to be the best, the biggest, and the most unforgettable. The Series 62 was the car of people who no longer needed to prove anything. Politicians, business leaders, movie stars. It was pure status. But under all that visual theater, there was something few expected. Beneath that endless hood lived a 390 cubic inch V8, producing around 345 horsepower. In a car weighing well over 2 tons, that translated into a very specific feeling. It wasn't violent acceleration. It was a constant wave of torque, effortless force, as if the car never truly felt heavy. On the open road, the Series 62 could push past 125 miles per hour with an unsettling ease for something so large. And it did it quietly, floating over the asphalt thanks to a suspension designed to isolate the driver from the outside world. While other cars vibrated and struggled, the Cadillac simply moved forward, unbothered, as if speed was something natural to it. What made the Series 62 truly dangerous wasn't raw speed. It was the false sense of calm it delivered. Everything about it made you forget how fast you were going. The interior was a rolling lounge with wide seats, luxurious materials, and driving smoothness so soft you could lose track of time and space. It was easy to be traveling much faster than you realized. And that was its secret. While other cars announced their power with noise and attitude, the Cadillac hid it under a layer of absolute luxury. It didn't need to race anyone. It simply knew it could. Today, a well-preserved 1959 Cadillac Series 62 can reach very high prices, especially in convertible form. But its true value is still symbolic. It represents an era when luxury and power weren't separate things. They were part of the same message. And now I want to pause here for a second. After seeing a luxury Chrysler winning races and a seemingly old-fashioned Hudson dominating NASCAR, tell me in the comments which of those two has surprised you more so far. Write it down and let's keep going, because the next car on the list proves that even the most elegant silence can hide something even more dangerous. 1960 Buick Electra 225. After Cadillac's visual excess, the Electra almost seems polite. Elegant, well-proportioned, no unnecessary show. It was the kind of car that didn't need to call attention to earn respect. In fact, its nickname said everything. Deuce and a quarter. A calm, confident presence built for people who valued comfort over spectacle. The Electra wasn't a car meant to impress at a stoplight. It was a car meant to swallow miles, quiet, stable, and extremely comfortable. But under that refined appearance, Buick hid something most people wouldn't associate with this type of vehicle. Under the hood, the Electra 225 could come with huge V8s like the 401 Nailhead, an engine famous not for revving high, but for delivering massive torque from very low RPM. It wasn't an engine that screamed, it pushed, and it did it in a constant, firm, almost intimidating way for a car that looked so civilized. On the open road, the Electra accelerated with deceptive smoothness. No drama, no excessive noise, just a continuous shove that made the car's weight disappear. It was easy to reach very high speeds without even noticing, because everything about the Buick was designed to isolate you from the mechanical effort happening under the hood. And that was its real danger. The Electra didn't make you feel fast. It made you feel comfortable. So comfortable that you could be traveling much faster than you thought. While other cars demanded constant attention, the Buick delivered a false sense of absolute control, like nothing could disturb it. Inside, the atmosphere reinforced that idea. Wide seats, quality materials, an unusually smooth ride, and a sense of solidity that inspired total confidence. It was the perfect car for long trips. And precisely because of that, one of the most deceptive of its era. Today, the Buick Electra. 225 is one of those classics many people overlook. It doesn't have the fame of louder names, but those who know it understand it was one of the great wolves in a tailored suit of the 1960s. A car that proved real danger doesn't always come with noise or aggressive attitude. And what comes next raises the bar even higher, because the next car wasn't only elegant and quiet, it was designed to represent power, authority, and presence. And even so, it hid more strength than anyone expected. 1964, Mercury Park Lane. This is one of those cars that almost never shows up on lists. And that's exactly why it fits this story so well. At first glance, it was an elegant, large, refined car built for people who wanted status without needing to show off. Not as flashy as a Cadillac, not as conservative as a Buick. It sat right in the middle, discreet, serious, and commanding respect without raising its voice. Mercury positioned it for executives, for long highway trips, for people who valued comfort, silence, and the feeling of total control. Everything about the Park Lane communicated calm. Its styling was clean and balanced, with no excess. Nothing about it suggested danger, but Ford had other plans. Under the hood, the Park Lane could be equipped with big FE family engines, including the 390 and, in special configurations, even the 427. Engines designed not only to move a large car easily, but to do it with a seemingly endless reserve of power. It wasn't abrupt or theatrical acceleration. It was solid, immediate response, like the car never had to strain. On the open road, the Park Lane felt stable, planted, and surprisingly fast. Its weight vanished the moment you pressed the throttle a little more than expected. And that was the trick. It didn't warn you. It simply moved forward with silent authority, leaving much more famous cars behind without anyone seeing it coming. Inside, the environment strengthened that false sense of tranquility. Wide seats, carefully chosen materials, excellent sound insulation, and ride comfort so smooth, it practically invited you to relax. It was easy to forget you were behind the wheel of a car with high-performance DNA hidden beneath a perfectly civilized appearance. Today, the Mercury Park Lane is one of those forgotten classics that few people search for and many underestimate. But those who know its story understand it was one of the great examples of dangerous elegance in the 1960s. A car that didn't need fame to earn respect. And what comes next takes this idea to another level, because the next car didn't just represent elegance and silence. It represented power, authority, and a presence that was almost intimidating, and yet it hid a strength that few people dared to challenge. 1963, Lincoln Continental. Some cars represent luxury, others represent speed. And then there's the Continental, a car that represented power, not mechanical power at first glance, but authority, presence, and control. It wasn't the kind of car you bought to impress your neighbor. You bought it to make it clear who was in charge. Its design was completely different from everything around it. Straight lines, clean surfaces, a total absence of excess. No exaggerated fins, no unnecessary ornaments. The Continental looked serious, almost solemn, a car that didn't need decoration because its presence alone demanded respect. And on top of that, Those rear suicide doors added a ceremonial feeling, as if every entrance and exit was an important event. But beneath that absolute calm was something few people stopped to consider. The Lincoln Continental wasn't slow, not at all. Under the hood lived a massive 430 cubic inch V8 designed to move a heavy, quiet, extremely solid car with authority. It wasn't built for racing or show, but it delivered torque so strong, the Continental moved forward with almost unsettling ease. It accelerated with no noise, no drama, no visible effort. On the highway, the Continental could maintain very high speeds for long periods with impressive stability. And it did it so smoothly that the driver could completely lose track of real speed. Everything was so well insulated, so well cushioned, that the outside world seemed to slide by slowly, even if the speedometer told a very different story. Inside, the experience was almost surreal. Wide seats, top-tier materials, a floating ride, and a silence that invited reflection more than adrenaline. It was built for long trips, important conversations, and people who valued control more than show. And that was its truly dangerous secret. The Lincoln Continental didn't ask you to be fast. It made you fast without you noticing. It was the kind of car that turned speed into something invisible, wrapped in elegance and authority. It's no accident this model became one of the most recognizable presidential cars in history. It represented exactly what America wanted to project at that moment: security, power, and absolute confidence. Today, the 1963 Lincoln Continental remains an icon of design and classic luxury. But those who know its story also know it was one of the great elegant wolves of its time, a car that didn't need to roar to be dangerous. And now, before we get to the final two cars on this list, I want to know something. Out of everything we've seen so far, which one feels the most deceptive to you? Leave it in the comments, because what comes next combines elegance and strength in a very special way. 1962, Pontiac Bonneville. This car holds a very special place in this story. Unlike some others on this list, the Bonneville didn't completely hide its character. It was elegant, yes, but it also communicated a clear feeling of contained power. It was the kind of car that seemed to tell you, without words, that it could do much more than it looked like. Back then, Pontiac was going through a deep transformation. The brand wanted to stop being seen as conservative and began leaning into performance, without giving up luxury or comfort. The Bonneville was the perfect result of that balance. Big, refined, comfortable, but with an attitude that felt noticeably more sporty than many of its direct rivals. Under the hood, the Bonneville could be equipped with serious V8s like the high-compression 389, capable of delivering impressive power for a car of its size. It wasn't designed to race on tracks, but its acceleration was surprising, and its throttle response made it clear Pontiac knew exactly what it was doing. On the road, the Bonneville felt stable and solid, but also more alive than you'd expect. It accelerated with conviction, held high speeds easily, and gave a sense of control that separated it from softer luxury cars. It was comfortable, yes, but not sleepy. There was always a reserve of energy waiting to be used. Inside, the atmosphere stayed refined. Wide seats, quality materials, and a smooth ride, but with a slightly more direct feel. The Bonneville was the car for someone who wanted to travel in comfort, but who also enjoyed feeling the engine respond when the road opened up ahead. Today, the 1962 Pontiac Bonneville represents the beginning of a new mindset in American cars, an era when luxury and performance started walking together, preparing the ground for what would come later with muscle cars. It was a car that knew how to be elegant without stopping being dangerous. And now, there's only one left. The final car on this list takes the idea to the extreme. It wasn't built to compete or to impress at first glance. It was created to offer the maximum possible luxury, and ended up hiding a strength few people dared to challenge. 1964, Imperial Crown. If any car took dangerous elegance to the extreme, it was the 1964 Imperial Crown. This wasn't a normal automobile. It didn't even compete directly with Cadillac or Lincoln in most people's minds. The Imperial existed in its own world. Bigger, more refined, more exclusive. A car built for people who didn't need recognition because they already had it. At first glance, the Imperial Crown looked like a rolling palace. Clean lines, massive proportions, and a presence that filled any street without needing exaggeration. It wasn't flashy in the traditional sense. It was imposing. Everything about it gave off a feeling of silent power, almost intimidating. But like every car on this list, the real secret was under the hood. The Crown carried huge V8s like Chrysler's 413, designed to move a car that weighed well over 2 tons with authority. It wasn't fast in a sporty sense, but its torque delivery was so strong that it accelerated with surprising ease. The weight seemed to disappear the moment you pressed the throttle a little more than expected. Inside, the luxury reached an almost excessive level. Premium materials, endless space, details designed for absolute comfort. It was a car that didn't invite you to race, yet it could do it without anyone noticing. And that's where the danger lived. It made you feel invincible, protected, untouchable. The Imperial Crown was never a popular car. It was exclusive from day one, and that's exactly what makes it so special today. It represents the highest point of classic American luxury, an era when brands dared to build cars with no compromises, no concessions, and no concern for practicality. And that brings us to the end of this journey through an era when elegance and danger walked side by side. Cars that didn't need to shout to command respect, that didn't chase the spotlight, but that hid a strength capable of surprising even today. Machines built in a time when luxury wasn't the enemy of power, and when the real threat traveled in silence. Now, I want your opinion. Out of all the cars we saw today, which one do you think was the most deceptive? Which one do you feel hid the most dangerous secret under an elegant appearance? Leave it in the comments, because that's where these stories stay alive, through the people who understand them and remember them. And if you're curious to see the other side of this story, the side where luxury doesn't hide and speed becomes the main character, you have to watch the next video on the channel. There, we talk about the fastest luxury coupes of the 1960s, cars that combined elegance, prestige, and numbers that seemed impossible for their time. It's the natural next chapter of this story. Click the video on screen and keep going with us through the golden era of the American automobile. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you on the next ride through the history on wheels.